So,
Would you believe me if I told you that 4,400 words on a single document written over 200 years ago still influences our nation today? Well, those 4,400 words that make up what we know as the United States Constitution have continued to make us the superpower that we are. The United States Constitution was made at a time when America needed a strong government. And what I want my listeners to walk away from is to understand the importance of why the United States Constitution was created. In fact, the Articles of Confederation were the first document that were created that would establish the United States government, and then through a process of conventions and meetings held by delegates of the 13 colonies, the Articles of Confederation were created and changed into the United States Constitution as we know today. Now, the Articles of Confederation had many issues. They were first made after the war, the Revolutionary War, and the 13 colonies defeated Great Britain. Franklin Ho's American Constitution, Volume 1, states that the ratification or the acceptance of the Articles of Confederation occurred and it started with Virginia in 1777 and ended with Maryland in 1781. One of the issues with the Articles of Confederation started when the colonies were in debt after war, because many times we've seen throughout history that a nation will go in debt and have to pay war expenses, such as they had to borrow money to purchase weapons, food, troops, and they had to pay all of this back. Elbridge Spalding's History of Legal Tender, the book that he wrote, states that America at that time started creating continental money, which is paper money. And the reason why this didn't go immediately into effect was because the people at that time knew that the gold and silver that used to be accepted in other countries was still more valuable, and they didn't want to just accept paper money. And so probably one of the biggest reasons why the Articles of Confederation didn't work is because it made the government weak in that there was no central ruler or king, and the government was weak in that it couldn't raise taxes and it had no national army, meaning it was wide open for attack. And so History.com, an article entitled "The Constitution," reveals that a convention was made and was held in Philadelphia of May 25th, 1787. During this convention, 55 delegates met out of the 12 of the 13 colonies or states at that time. Rhode Island was the only one that wasn't represented at the convention because they were still iffy on if the government would still try to take over and be involved in too much of their economic affairs. A man by the name of Edmund Randolph created what is known now as the Virginia Plan, and he came up with the concept of the government would rule, and that it would represent the population. It would serve the people, but each state before had only one vote per state to vote for various wars or treaties or to pass laws. And now with this new law, the Virginia Plan, each state would send in representatives based on population. For example, a really big state like Texas would have like 50 delegates, as opposed to a state in Maryland that maybe only had like a couple, because it would represent the population. And so the smaller states didn't like this. They wanted equality. And so a man by the name of William Patterson, a delegate from New Jersey, created the New Jersey Plan. And with this plan, it gave government the power to tax and the power to trade, but it's kept the states to keep voting for one vote. And this was none of the large states like this. No one really had their way. So what ended up happening was in 1787, the Constitution was finally brought up, and a man by the name of Roger Sherman came up with the idea known as the Great Compromise, where two houses in Congress, the Senate and House of Representatives, was created. The Senate would send in 2 senators from each state, and the House of Representatives would send in representatives of the population. And so at this point, everyone got their way. The larger states and the small states got what they wanted. And finally, the Constitution that was signed after this it wasn't enough. It didn't protect their rights. So a man by the name of James Madison created what we know now as the Bill of Rights, the 10 Bill of Rights. And so through a process of trial and error from the late 18th century, the United States has become what we know of it today. And so it began as the Articles of Confederation, and delegates who wanted to reform the country sent in and had ideas to change the country. And although it's been over 200 years, the government adheres to it today.